Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, sir, for sitting in the front. Appreciate it. I want to do, hopefully what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit different than the normal presentations here. So I'm going to talk about cloud and SaaS economics in the media and entertainment industry and some of the pitfalls to avoid that we've seen. Many of you probably know Signiant. What we do is not necessarily help you optimize your cloud costs. So the approach I'm taking here is that we have over the last 5 years completely moved our business and our products into the cloud as cloud native transformation, and moved at this point, I think, about 70% of our total revenue into a cloud native SaaS product architecture from old on-prem technology. And so we've learned a lot there, and as we are in the middle of moving content and media workflows around, we see a lot of the same things with our customers. So talk a little bit about our business just in the context of what it means and the transformation that we've gone through, but really what I want to talk about today is what we've learned in doing all this. And as you look to, as a vendor or as a media organization, look to utilize cloud to transform the way that you do business. So just to give you a little bit of sense of scale, so Signiant, we are content exchange. We originally started with point-to-point hardware-based content exchange, which is fantastic for intra-company content exchange, and really though is very tough to scale from an global intra-company exchange platform. And so in order to scale at the level we wanted to and with the security that we needed to be able to support our customers and our business, we had to start looking at the cloud. So you know, at the time, or now, we have over 1 million users on our global cloud platforms, 50,000 businesses connected across 200 countries around the world, and we're moving 50 plus petabytes every month, all in the cloud. So it's not necessarily a pitch for our company, but just to tell you of the kind of scope and scale in which we've gone through this transformation, and I'd like to share what we've learned there. You know, we've seen a massive uptick in cloud input output of the content and data that we're transferring in the marketplace, and it's accelerated massively in the last couple of years. So when we first launched our first cloud native exchange product, Media Shuttle, in 2015. I don't obviously have numbers here, but you can see the scale of which that content was moving between an on-prem solution and a cloud-based archive, and it was small. And it's begun to grow, and over the last 2 years, we've seen massive uptake. And so what that's really given rise to is an incredibly complex supply chain. I'm sure we talk about this in every single one of the presentations here today, but the ability to transform the way we're doing business in the cloud is fantastic, but it also brings a tremendous amount of complexity and cost consideration and changes to the economics of your business, of your customer's business, the way you pay for and buy services. Some good things, some bad things, some just to be aware of. And so as you think about what we're doing either with your service, with your customer service in the cloud, all of the goodness and change to a workflow that the products can bring is highly efficient, but comes at an enormous cost. And most customers surveyed these days have gone from thinking about migration to thinking about how do I control what I've already migrated, and where does it make sense really to focus going forward. So 61% of companies are reporting that managing the costs of their cloud deployments is their top priority. And so we've been through it. We've gone from a significant uptick, significant amount of R&D spend to a nice, steady run rate and optimization. And I think I can hopefully share a little bit of the top 5 things that we've seen in our transformation and in the transformation of our customers. So, number 1 is a buying process overkill. I'll talk a little bit more about all of these, but the way that both customers and vendors buy and sell products these days has changed significantly because of the changes in economic model, in cost model, in usage versus OpEx versus CapEx. And it's something that really needs to be taken into consideration as you think about what you're trying to accomplish utilizing new technology. Underestimating what it will actually cost you to roll your own products. Now, whether that's using a toolkit of cloud-native SaaS pieces from an Amazon or an Azure, or actually building coding and designing something on your own, really having a good understanding of what's core technology to your business and what can be bought off the shelf is critically important. Whoops, sorry, skipped ahead there. Especially as you start to consider services built on cloud technology, whether they're SaaS, whether they're licensed, whether they're usage-based, what's actually in those products and services and what are you paying for is really important to understand. So like storage is a good example. A lot of services will bundle storage in for you. Do you really need to have storage bundled in, or do you have your own? And then really thinking through the economics of on-demand usage-based products and subscription-based products is important as you really start to scale and deliver against the products and services that you're delivering. And then on the second part of that, understanding and estimating appropriately the utilization of the services that you're buying and using. I mean, we've all been dealing with this in kind of just basic network topologies for years, but are you actually utilizing to the best of your ability what you have provisioned for yourself? So these 5 things I'll talk a little bit more about, but are kind of critical to success in utilizing cloud and SaaS-based architectures. So number 1, buying process overkill. When I started putting this presentation together and thinking about this topic, I was really thinking of buying process overkill in the sense of economic modeling. But I was actually in a dinner at IBC a couple weeks ago, which was really interesting. It's hosted by someone else, so it wasn't Mesa, so I won't mention. But we had a room full of vendors, sellers of media technology. We had a room full of buyers of media technology. And the question posed to each was, what are the 3 things that you would change about the buying process? And I was shocked that of the 3 things that buyers named and that sellers named, 2 of them were exactly the same. Third, slightly different. I don't know why I was shocked by that. It's kind of, the 2 things make a lot of sense. And the first one, which is not so germane to my discussion today, was RFPs are broken. Okay, I think we can all agree to that, hopefully. But the second was vendors saying, can you ask for, tell us what the solution you're trying to achieve, the problem you're trying to solve and the solution you're trying to achieve is. And buyers saying, can you bring to us solutions to our problems, not products and features? And so those 2 things are really tightly aligned, and it's critical that we found in our transition to a SaaS and cloud model is to really clearly understand what you're trying to accomplish. What is the task or business process that you're trying to achieve? Move my playout system to the cloud. That's not the task or process you're really trying to achieve, right? That's a tactic to achieve something else. So what is it that you're really trying to accomplish? For us, it was take what is a pretty fixed network topology-based content exchange network and make it much easier to deploy, more scalable, and more secure when we are talking about exchanging content between disparate companies around the world. And there was no possible way to do that, adding hardware into every endpoint and trying to cross-connect across companies and firewalls and security. So that was kind of the thing that we were trying to achieve when we started looking at rebuilding our business on a cloud and SaaS model. The second thing in relation to the buying process is don't just try to replicate exactly what you're already doing, but do it in the cloud. The entire point of what we can do with service-based architectures, AI services, et cetera, is to rethink what the workflow, the process, the technology that we're using is trying to accomplish, and find out if there's a better way to do it. And that kind of was echoed in that dinner that I was just mentioning, and that there are solutions that I don't know exist, that you don't know exist, that could do things that could be incredible for your business. But if you're starting off just trying to replicate what you already have at a lower cost model in a usage-based environment, it's not going to work. The other advantage from a buying process perspective of cloud and SaaS is that you don't have to spend 3 years evaluating a whole bunch of technology because you're about to spend millions of dollars on hardware that's going to be in your environment for the next 10 years. Right? You can easily start small, test, try. If it doesn't work, turn off for minimal costs. So one of the things we found, and I believe in talking about our product set as well, is that you just start small and you can always grow. Don't spend more money on POC and testing than it would actually cost to just install the product and see if it works. Because whether you're doing usage-based SaaS or a subscription, you can always turn it off. And then in terms of SaaS and related to start small and grow, right? Remember the last S in SaaS stands for service. So think about from a buying process, as you buy, procure, provision these types of usage-based or subscription services, every single company or vendor that you work with probably has a new role called CSM, or Customer Success Manager, or something in the case. The job is to make sure that the technology products that you have purchased and integrated into your workflow is working and adding value. And if it's not, it's easy to take out and remove. So companies like us have invested a significant amount of money in understanding that what you buy is only step 2 in the entire product life cycle. And so the ability to start small, grow, solve a problem, look into what else can be done utilizing these services is a critical success factor to a successful buying process in the SaaS marketplace. And then secondly, underestimating the cost of rolling your own services. So one of the areas that we spent a lot of time looking at was really in the kind of back to my last slide about reworking your workflows, but also underestimating your roll your own costs, right? The logging, monitoring, analytics pieces of many services, ours specifically in tracking and chain of custody of content, is significantly cumbersome. So we had it well dialed in with our manager and agents product, on-prem, logs being stored, but then logs fill up on on-prem services. And so if we just started to move the entire process into the cloud, we would fill up hundreds and hundreds of, eventually probably petabytes of storage capacity. So thinking about how to rework that workflow to provide notification, storage of records where possible, offload to on-prem storage, keep in cloud storage, thinking about whether we needed to actually write our own reporting and notification services, or we could just use simple notification services out of Amazon or any one of the other pieces of technology that's available on a SaaS or license basis in the cloud. There's a considerable amount of time used in making sure that we could realize the value there. And so I think as you start to think about what you could do yourself with a tool set and what you can achieve with a set of custom design, or not custom, but product design solutions to achieve the same goal, it's important to really understand what, again, back to what are you trying to accomplish and what are the actual cost implications of creating that yourself, using a kit of parts, or looking at a SaaS vendor in the marketplace. If it works, great. If it doesn't work out, you can always move on to the next. So really rethinking that buying and writing versus subscribing process, I think, is a key thing that we had to consider in a number of different ways, and we see constantly from our customer base. And then as you start to look at, I'm not going to roll my own. I'm going to buy a service from a customer or a vendor. You know, what exactly are you trying to achieve, and what are you getting in that service? So lots of things end up getting bundled into your $100 a month or $10,000 a year or whatever your subscription is. Even in a metered environment, you know, what are we metering against? Am I getting the complete value? So really understanding exactly what you're paying for is critically important. And then part of what you're paying for is this really the right place to run this specific workflow? So kind of back to my note about our logging and monitoring services and notification services, right? There's an important amount of security apparatus in terms of where content has gone and who has touched it. And a lot of that data is very specific and owned to our customers. And as we look at MPAA rules and content privacy, needs to live in different places. Notifications don't necessarily need to be in a contracted and walled garden. So what parts of workflow do you need to have in a cloud or a SaaS environment, and what parts don't you? And especially when you think about it from a content perspective, input and output of cloud data, as we all know, is significantly expensive in most cases. So even in a content workflow, does your content need to live in the cloud? Is it going to be much more efficient if it's on-prem? Who needs access to it? When do they need access to it? All of those pieces of understanding of where individual pieces of workflow or process need to live is critically important to the economics of putting together a cloud service. And so if you're overpaying for things that you're not going to use, like storage in the cloud or a notification service that you don't need included in the product, that's an area where you can start to see significant economic savings. And then how is that going to impact your overall cost of ownership, depending on which pieces are cloud enabled, which pieces are SaaS subscription service, which pieces are usage-based services? You've really got to think about mapping through each of the individual modules or components that you've put together in a solution and knowing how that's going to impact your total cost of ownership, which leads me into how you're paying for what you actually are using. So, of course, we all know that one of the huge advantages here is flexibility. And I already mentioned you can swap in and out different pieces of technology depending on how well they're working, how well they're not working, how well they're specifically working for you in what you're trying to achieve. But then you have to contrast that with cost predictability and flexibility as well, right? Pay as you go sounds great until all of a sudden you're using hundreds of millions of gigabytes of content or network, and all of a sudden your costs are through the roof, which goes back to the original second slide I was talking about, which is that most companies today are looking to figure out how to rein in their cloud costs, not increase them. So understanding really, again, the workflow and what you are paying for in its entirety, and then whether the most important thing for you is the flexibility that's provided by that workflow or the predictability of the cost model is really important. And also what is the end user or purpose of the workflows that you're looking at? Developer workflows obviously lend themselves much better to a pay-as-you-go kind of super flexible cost model. We're going to spin something up, we're going to test it, we're going to try it, hopefully it works. If it doesn't work, we'll shut it down again. But when we're talking about consumer-focused services or predictable long-term deliverables, that pay-as-you-go model has a significant chance of creating a lot more cost than you expected. So it really is important to think about which piece of technology are we talking about here, and what is its intended purpose, because both models work well, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. And then, for the most part, the people and companies and products that you're working for and with have a lot of experience here. So generally, they understand how they are pricing their products, what those underlying cost models look like, and really how to best deploy against what you're doing. So for me, I run a sales team. I'm about to swap out our revenue and sales ops platform because it just doesn't do exactly what I need it to do, for another one that I know does exactly what I need it to do. And there's not a whole lot I really need to do in terms of doing evaluation against implementation and cost models. They have dialed in through 1,000 customers what works and what doesn't work. And so that kind of scope and scale that's delivered across a truly multi-tenant SaaS platform gives what we would hope is a well-tried and trusted model that can be relied on. I skipped ahead there. The last thing that I want to talk about here is just overestimating utilization. So this goes hand in hand, in my view, with the start small and build. Right? It is unlikely that if you bought a direct connect network circuit from Amazon to your on-prem storage solution to replicate data back and forth, that you're going to have that utilized 100% of the time. So when you look at the cost and then you think about what's my utilization, well, I'm going to always be using it. So actually the per gig cost on that is fantastic. Are you really going to be always utilizing it? It's back to the flexible and predictable model, right? Really understanding how you're going to utilize a SaaS subscription or pay-as-you-go service is critical to understanding which one is going to be right for your specific workflow. So small utilization, pay-as-you-go, pay for what you use, whatever you want to call it, is a great model. Highly spiky, unpredictable utilization, a SaaS or subscription model is really compelling because you don't have to worry about that so much yourself. You've got a nice, predictable cost model. But each of those has its own advantages and pitfalls, and the critical thing to understand is what is your utilization really going to be as you look at a cloud model like this. And then, so just to summarize, we spent a lot of time. It's been 8 years now, I guess, since we launched our first truly cloud-native product to the marketplace. We've changed the way that we price and bill our services. We've changed the way that we contract with our customers. I run a sales team. We've changed the way that our sales and buying process with our customers works. So think about, has your process and evaluation process changed when you're looking at SaaS or cloud technology? You probably don't need to spend 6 months on a POC. You can start small and just get started. If it doesn't work, you can stop using it. You can swap out modules for each other. You can integrate via API with old systems, with new systems. So the idea of having to understand and have an answer to every single possible problem that might come up is kind of, in my view, a little bit of a legacy buying process where you were going to spend $10 million on hardware that you would have for the next 20 years. And even from a vendor side, that kind of model incents me as a seller to try to get as much money as I possibly can from you now, because I'm not going to talk to you again for another 5 years. So the economics of SaaS and cloud are not just about the technology and the cost, but understanding the changing buying process and then customer-vendor relationship that you're in now. So it's now a partnership, right? Remember I mentioned everyone's got a customer success manager role. The goal of a vendor is to make sure the customer is successful because they can turn it off at any point. So just as we started to procure the back-end services for our platform, really that mindset actually is a significant amount of shift when you start thinking about how to put things together. That all ties into evaluating properly what it'll cost you to do it yourself. Everybody wants to build stuff, of course. That's what engineers do. It's fun. But do you really need to? Then think about, when you do decide that you're buying, what really are you buying versus what are you trying to accomplish? So there's everyone's soup to nuts, end to end, glass to glass, whatever you want to call it. What's really included in that? Is that really what you're looking for? What are the core pieces of functionality that you need to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? And then, just think about the model, pay as you go, SaaS, license fee. What are you trying to accomplish? What is the predictability of the service that you're delivering? All of those tie into what your model should be when you're looking at cloud and SaaS services. And then finally, utilization. It's tough, especially when we're thinking about not just replicating existing workflows, but rethinking workflows. How much utilization are the different components going to use? But if you rely on models and vendors and partners and SaaS services that have multi-tenancy and hundreds, if not thousands or millions of customers, there should be a really good model there. And back to that changing dynamic between buyer and seller, right? In a SaaS cloud environment, it's a partnership, and rely on that. All right, and I think that's really the end of my presentation. Hopefully it's useful in some of the things that we've learned. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.